Hey everyone, ProWrestleBlog here. Today I'm going to talk about the three major problems of current day WWE. The first problem is that killing the territory system was the beginning of the downfall for wrestling. The territory system was the most perfect system ever created for pro wrestling, and I'm going to tell you why. Alright, here's how a normal territory would usually run. You'd get your booker, and you'd bring a couple of guys in, say for a 3 to 6 month run. You would do everything you could with them. You would push them to the top, and you would basically take them from the lowest levels of wrestling to the top in a pretty quick time span. They went over all the people you didn't push or you already pushed, and they would rise to the top to create the eventual big showdown with the top babyface. And of course, they would finally lose once they've done that. So they'd win all their matches, they'd get pushed hard, they'd look like an unstoppable beast, and then they'd meet up for the showdown with the big face of the territory, and they'd lose. Now, a lot of people make fun of me for this, but I've booked years of territories and thousands of shows just for fun as a hobby. Okay, fine, it's dorky, I don't care, whatever. But it really teaches you about how the inner aspects of wrestling works. Once you've pushed a guy as far as you really can push him on his own, and you've done everything you can, and you've had him finally lose the big match, there's not a lot left to do with that you can do with the guy. If you keep having him win, you're just going to basically force another big match with the top babyface, and it's not going to be as exciting the second time around. If you have him lose, then all that effort that you just put into him is worthless, and it makes everybody look bad. Not only makes him look bad, it makes all the people he beat look bad, because now this guy sucks. So, what territories did to get around this was that after they'd have, say, the big heel come in, beat up everybody, fight the top babyface, and lose, he would move on to the next territory. And this worked really well because this was in the era where people didn't have cable TV. So, you could book, say, King Kong Bundy to come in, do his 5 count challenge, beat up everybody along the way, be an unstoppable beast, and then lose to the main champ and get on his merry way. And since this was in the non-cable era, you could do this in 20 different places. And it was absolutely a brilliant system, because you do it in Florida, then you go do it in Memphis, you go do it in World Class, you go do it in New York. No one saw it, might as well do it again. Didn't take, rewriting the book or anything. He just did what worked in one place and then brought it over to the next place. And what was brilliant about the territory system was that if it didn't work, like it did in Florida and Memphis, if it didn't work in Texas, you take it to the next place. There were 10 or 20 different places to go, so you had lots of options on where to take it. And that's why it was so beautiful. And the best part was, the guy actually stayed strong, because he'd only lose once, and if he won 15 times and he lost once, it's not that big of a deal. So, he would just continue on his way. He'd still stay relatively strong, and eventually, once he ran through the other territories, it'd be fresh enough again that he could come back to your territory. And people don't remember that long, especially in the days where they didn't have cable. So, you could run almost the same angle again, and no one would really notice the difference. And it was really great in that aspect. This is where current WWE fails. What happens is, you just push that guy to the top. And in WWE, everyone's under contract, so this isn't no handshake 6-month deal. You've signed this guy, probably for a couple years. So you pushed him to the top, you did everything you could with him, and you had him lose. What's left for him to do? Not too much. You have to find a way to... You can either keep having him win, and I guess eventually force a second showdown with the top babyface. But he's already beaten everyone else, so he's going to look weak. Or excuse me, they're going to look weak because, hey, he's already beaten them. Who wants to see that a second time? So the second option in current day WWE is that you have him lose or you have him go 50-50 with people. This isn't really exciting. It's boring because we've already seen it, and it doesn't help the guy. It doesn't help the promotion because you've already seen him at his peak. Now you got to see him drop down below. WWE gets stuck here because they can't get rid of the guy once they've done everything they can with him because he still has another year or so on that contract. So he just kind of goes into the mid-card where he just meanders for the rest of his contract and has nothing really to do because they've done everything they want to him. And they end up finding guys who they haven't explored all options with yet, and that guy ends up jobbing to the next guy. And it's not a bad problem. It's not even a bad thing in theory, but the problem is that if you ever want to push that guy again, it's going to be a harder sell the second or third time around after he's lost to everybody that you're trying to push him as a threat. So the guy basically just lingers on, becomes boring, and, you're stuck. But the territory system prevented all this from happening. And that's why losing the territory system was a really big problem. Every promotion in the world suffered when WWE did this. Japan suffered because they didn't have no Hansen or Destroyer or all kinds of top gaijin to fight anymore. And Japan had to become a Japanese versus Japanese country for the most part, instead of being Japanese versus the foreigners. Japan couldn't get the top WWE wrestlers or the top stars because they were all signed to WWE. And WWE really screwed up because when they helped kill out all the other territories, they basically killed 15 possible feeder leagues for them. And let me tell you, 15 people who are actually from each city are going to have better local connections and are going to be able to find local stars and get in touch with people a lot easier than a mega corporation is who goes everywhere. Just think, there were all those territories. They knew everybody in their various places. They had all the connections. They could do anything they wanted. And they're all gone now. And when WWE killed the territories, they killed off all that. And, a lot of times other promotions would take talent who was struggling in one promotion, and that talent would leave, and then they would come somewhere else. And, basically what WWE ended up doing was they'd take all the talent who was the top of the small territories, and they'd make them even bigger. And they'd use them as their own development system, and they would steal their talent. But you can't do that anymore because there are no territories. And all we have are indies right now, and indies really aren't the same. You can't compare working 1 day a week in the same place as opposed to working 3 or 4 days a week in 5 or 6 different places, all month and year long. Sometimes, even further. And it really hurt wrestling as a whole. And although it seemed like the best idea ever to kill out all your competition, it ended up being one of the worst decisions ever because when WWE gets stuck now, it's all on them. And they've tried to rectify this problem by creating their own territory system in NXT, but it's expensive as they're seeing, and it's not that easy to pull off. So, to recap, WWE basically killed 15 possible territories to build one development territory in the end. Alright, WWE's second biggest problem right now is having way too much TV time. I don't care what it is. I do not want to watch anything for 3 hours a week, let alone 8 or 9 hours. And that's what WWE has right now. You get 3 hours of Raw, 2 hours of SmackDown, 1 hour of NXT, an hour of 205 Live, plus 3 hour PPVs, or pay-per-views. It's too much. It's way too much. It gets boring. No one wants to watch it for that long. And WWE doesn't have a huge roster like WCW did. WCW had over 120 people. It wasn't as bad for them. But WWE has 40 to 50 people, and only really about 10 or 20 really matter. So what happens is WWE has to have the same people all the time since they're all in contract, and they all end up losing to each other. And very quickly, you can see people get slotted, in certain roles, like the 205 guys. They're always going to be jobbers to the main WWE stars, no matter what you do. And the more time you have to fill, the more good matches you give away. It's a lot of time to fill, and wrestling isn't that big where you can just, run all those matches. WWE also has a problem in that, doing this year after year with mostly the same roster is really hard. And a lot of times, even though they have to put on a big main event each year, they end up having to do dirty finishes so they don't give away everything, so they get you to order the next show. And no one likes to see dirty finishes. They ruin the product, and they're just not that interesting. WWE's last problem to me is that they have 40 writers, or sometimes even more. Imagine trying to write a book with 40 different people. That would be really hard. There's no way you all would agree on everything, and you all would have your own different ideas, and it just wouldn't work together. You can't have 40 coaches on a team. You can't have 40 chefs in one kitchen. It's too many cooks, if you remember that one. Um, and that's a problem. Like I said, for fun, I'll book sometimes. And I can't imagine how it would work if I had 15 other people trying to give me advice and try to do things their way. You need one booker. That's all you need. You need one booker, maybe a sub booker to help you out sometimes, but having that many writers is just insane. That's not wrestling. That's not how it works, and it just decreases the quality. It ruins it for everybody, and more is not better in WWE. Quantity does not equal quality. Less is definitely more, and having so many writers really hurts WWE. So I'm pro Blog. Those are my thoughts for the three biggest reasons WWE's having issues right now. And I think WWE is going to be having similar issues for a long time. They really killed themselves for the long term when they hurt the territory system. And the only way I really see to rectify that is by creating a new territory system, which defeated the purpose of beating it in the first place. If I were WWE, I'd also get rid of the TV time. Vince will tell you you only need 90 minutes or so a week. I don't even need that. I think 1 hour show per week is more than enough to get everything you want to get across. Because you can't push 16 people at once. You can push 1, 2, maybe even 3, but people got to lose eventually, and it's too hard with all those people. And with WWE writers, I just book it. I just put it down to one writer, one vision, one direction. That's the way to go. That's the best way to book wrestling. Thank you for listening, and stay tuned for more Pro Wrest Blog from www.prowrestblog.blogspot.com. Thank you.